As we await Marvel's Phase 4, the future of the MCU is both an exciting and ominous prospect right now. While we've seen full stops added to the stories of some of the franchise's most important figures already, there are still lots of others who could be leaving Marvel films forever in the next couple of years. It's basically going to be a brave new world. And even as we look to the potential new dawns promised by new characters, new platforms, and entirely new stories, there are a considerable number of existing questions and dropped plots from previous MCU films that need to still be explored. Interestingly, now that we've got Phase 4 mapped out for us, we can start to see where those loose ends might well be tied up. I'm Simon from WhatCulture.com, and this is 10 MCU loose ends that will mean something in Phase 4. Number 10, Scarlet Witch's devastating past. It's all too simple to imagine that Scarlet Witch is fine now that she's going to have her Disney Plus show with Vision, reuniting her with her great love, and giving them a sitcom life together for some reason. But dig a little deeper and you get a sense of some real darkness hanging over her future, and it's all because Wanda really is not fine. Her parents were killed, she went through near torturous experiments at the hands of Hydra to awaken her powers, her brother was killed, she accidentally committed mass murder, she was locked up by the people she trusted not once, but twice, was forced to kill the man/robot that she loved, and then watch him revived and killed again, and to top it all off, she was then clicked out of existence. Thinking that she wouldn't be volatile at this stage would be just plain wrong. In Phase 4, we're going to see the payoff of all of this as the MCU's Wanda has her House of M style moment. But instead of killing all mutants, she's going to have some sort of catastrophic break that leads to a destabilisation of reality, which can be the only way she ends up reunited with Vision. Number 9. What happened in Budapest? Much like the Kessel Run, the mission in Budapest that seemingly drew Hawkeye and Black Widow together closer than ever has hung over the MCU like an enigmatic secret that never really needed to be explored further. It was always a gag that hinted at a shared past and different perceptions of the experience to set up the pair's personalities and give them something more than just superpowers. Still, it's a question that fans have somewhat understandably picked up on since, and even though Black Widow is now dead, we're finally getting an answer to why Budapest is important. We might not get an actual flashback to Black Widow and Clint on their mission there, but Natasha is returning there for her solo movie, and we will presumably get to see the film exploring some of the fallout from what happened back then. Number 8. The Iron Patriot program. It might not be talked about all that often, but it's important to remember that one of the very first Iron Man armours wasn't even owned by Tony Stark. The War Machine armour was effectively just stolen from Stark while he was drunk by James Rhodes under the guise of him confiscating it on behalf of the US Air Force. From there on, War Machine works not for Stark but for the US government, and in the wake of the Battle of New York, his role changes from that of a secret weapon to a public-facing, state-sponsored superhero. He effectively takes up the same position Captain America was used for during the Second World War, and then after Iron Man 3, and some merciless ribbing from Stark, the Patriot suit disappears entirely and the government seemingly just drops the idea of having their own super lapdog. Well, apart from Captain America, of course. Now that Cap is gone, and his replacements are seemingly less government-aligned, that line of thinking is about to come back with a bang, as the Falcon and the Winter Soldier will include the debut of US Agent. In the comics, he was introduced when Steve Rogers stepped away from his government role, and it would make sense that the government realises the need for such visible heroes and symbols of patriotism, and brings in US Agent as a state-sponsored alternative to Bucky and Sam. Number 7. The Secret of the Twins. Thanks to Marvel's lack of mutant rights and a weird quirk of ownership, Kevin Feige's studio could use Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, but were never allowed to call them mutants or refer to their famous father. Their answer was not to make them Inhumans, as they easily could have but thankfully avoided doing, but rather to have their powers awakened or created by Hydra's experiments with Loki's scepter. The thing is, they weren't the only test subjects. Wolfgang von Strucker's Hydra plan was to build an army of superpowered humans, but only the twins survived. The question you have to ask here is why they survived, and it's not something the MCU has explored yet. If the rumours that New Mutants is going to be co-opted into Marvel's Phase 4 without mention of mutants, then the secret of how the twins got their powers could be about to mean a great deal. Because rumour has it, Kevin Feige doesn't want to introduce them as mutants at all, but rather simply as mysteriously empowered individuals, which would suggest that he needs precedent for that to happen. If the twins' story is changed slightly, and we get a more overt suggestion that they were latently powered and the scepter woke them up, then the same could be used to explain the New Mutants. Number 6. Lady Sif. We can only be told so many times that Lady Sif is off somewhere on another mission before we start to really question what the hell she's been up to. Whatever this mysterious mission is, she's missed the fall of Asgard, the decimation of her people, and the destruction of half of the universe's existing life. So it must be pretty big. When Thor Ragnarok came and went, it was widely assumed that we would simply not get to see Lady Sif again. But there is a big opportunity coming in Phase 4 that would see her return. Taika Waititi is already giving Natalie Portman's Jane Foster the return to favour she deserves, while also pushing Valkyrie's story further. So adding Lady Sif to the story would make a lot of sense. Perhaps we could even see Sif answering the question of who Valkyrie will choose for her queen. Whatever the specifics, we must surely be getting another step in one of the only surviving Asgardian stories. Surely. Number 5. The Inhumans. Like it or not, the Inhumans were part of the MCU, just as the Netflix shows were part of the MCU, and just as all of the other TV shows were. We were told they were, and no matter how much Kevin Feige might regret that in retrospect, because some of them turned out to be a little bit bad, we can't just forget that. Because Inhumans was a serious low point for Marvel's current product, and one that was effectively cut off before it even debuted, it has now mostly been scrubbed from the MCU entirely, including in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But the announcement of Miss Marvel on Disney Plus as part of the MCU changes that because her origin is tied inherently to the Inhumans. The MCU had a means to change origins like that because the Infinity Stones existed, hence Captain Marvel's powers. But they're gone now, and it's not like Kamala Khan can be used in a super soldier program. Her origin fundamentally has to still be linked to the Inhumans, so we're going to see the unlikely situation where Marvel's biggest regret has to come back somehow. Number 4. The Winter Soldier's past. Just as Scarlet Witch's past can't simply be tied up with a bone forgotten about, neither can Bucky's. Even after he was reprogrammed by Shuri in Wakanda, he still has some serious skeletons in his closet, and it's not enough to simply say that he's cured and everything is finished with. That's certainly not what Zemo is going to do now that he's been confirmed as the villain for the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which perhaps explains why the series refers to him as the Winter Soldier and not by Bucky or the White Wolf. His return suggests that we're going to see a continuation of the friction between Bucky and Zemo, probably inspired by the latter's disgust that superheroes continue to not be held accountable at all for their actions. The Russos have hinted that Bucky remains volatile, which is why he wasn't chosen to be the new Cap, and him having to deal with all of the targets he took out over the years as an assassin after the point of him healing is a very interesting position. Number 3. Too many sorcerers. While the title of the Doctor Strange sequel suggests that we're going to see Nightmare as the big bad, since he inhabits the dream dimension right next door to the realm of madness, there's an almighty hangover from the first Doctor Strange that Scott Derrickson can't just ignore. That's the small matter of Karl Mordo. Having turned heel after the events of that movie, Mordo vowed to rid the world of sorcerers to ensure that the balance of the universe is upheld. He's got bloody murder on his mind, and while he believes himself to be morally justified, he's clearly going to have to be the secondary villain of In the Multiverse of Madness. With Strange heading into the multiverse to deal with something, we know not what yet, you have to imagine Mordo will be furious at more meddling, and it could even be that he aligns himself with Nightmare to try and remove Strange entirely. Number 2, the earthquakes off Wakanda. Perhaps this is wishful thinking, but there's a huge opportunity in Black Panther 2 to address not one but two loose ends from previous MCU movies. The bigger of the two is the most recent. As the surviving heroes reported back to Black Widow in Endgame, Okoye mentioned some underwater earthquakes off the coast of Wakanda, tying that activity and its location back to a fan favourite Easter egg from Iron Man 2. We could well be looking at Namor's debut in Ryan Coogler's second Panther movie. It would make sense that a new unknown threat would appear for Wakanda too. After all, the first threat to T'Challa's rule came from within, and his decision to then open Wakanda's doors led to concerns about possible external threats. For that to be inverted so that the threat comes from below, as Wakanda's activity threatens to disrupt Atlantis, would be a genius move. Number 1, the Red Room program. What we know about Black Widow's mysterious past can probably just about cover a single page of that ledger she used to mention. We now know the name of her father, Ivan, thanks to Red Skull. We now know that she was a product of the Red Room, and we know that she defected to join S.H.I.E.L.D. That's not really a broad enough picture to explain why a psychologically conditioned agent of murder suddenly decided to up sticks and join the other side. Even more intriguingly, the flashbacks in Avengers Age of Ultron confirmed that Natasha wasn't the only Black Widow, and from then on, we could only imagine where the others went. Thankfully, we need wonder no more, as the Black Widow solo movie is going to introduce us to at least 2 other Black Widows and also Red Guardian, who appears to have been a product of a similar program, probably the same one that created the Winter Soldier in fact. Black Widow is likely to close out the Red Room story as some of its most famous graduates turn on it, but before that happens, we should hopefully get more answers about it and Natasha's veiled past. Which MCU loose ends would you most like to see tied up in Phase 4 and beyond? Share yours below in the comments thread, and don't forget to subscribe to What Culture and What Culture Comics for more superhero goodness.